My wife and I had been together for almost 20 years when we ended things. It was by far one of the most difficult decisions I ever had to make, but I know that it was the right one. We met when we were in our early 20s, and it was pretty much love at first sight for me. I saw her and thought she was perhaps one of the most beautiful women I had ever seen, so I approached her and asked her out. She actually ended up rejecting me the first time I asked her. It stung, but I moved on with my life. Even though she turned me down, I still found my mind wandering back to her from time to time. About 3 weeks after our first encounter, I ran into her again at the grocery store. I recognized her right away, and I thought that it was almost like fate that I ran into her. What struck me was that she recognized me too. I thought she would have instantly forgotten about me and carried on with some other person, but that wasn't the case. We started talking at the grocery store, and I decided I would ask her out a second time. This time she said yes. I always loved telling everybody about how we met in our story because I thought it highlighted that we were meant to be together. For 20 years in our marriage, everything was flawless. We made good money. We had a beautiful home. We had 4 children together. And everyone was happy and healthy. We had our fair share of arguments, but it was always something that we worked through and took the time to understand the root cause of the arguments to improve our relationship for the future. There was a point in our marriage where it felt like we were fighting almost every day. I remember thinking that it was one of the worst times in my life every day. I was afraid that she and I would be getting a divorce. It was that bad. We ended up going to marriage counseling, and it helped us work through a lot of our issues. My wife and I recently decided that we wanted to put our house on the market and move into a new neighborhood. There were a lot of things we needed to do before listing it. One of the biggest ones that we had was getting rid of 20 years worth of accumulated junk. One day, I went up to the attic to go through some of the boxes we had stashed away up there to determine what needed to be trashed or sold. I found a box of my wife's old things and started going through it. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, but rather I was just sorting through it. At the bottom of the box, I found an old journal. All the time that I knew my wife, I had never known her to keep a journal or a diary or anything like that. Honestly, I thought it might have been something from her teenage years. I admit it might have been an invasion of privacy, but I let my curiosity win, and I peeked inside. When I saw the dates on the entries, I realized they were from the time we were married. I almost decided to put the journal away and pretend like I hadn't seen it. It felt kind of invasive, reading about thoughts that she had while we were together. But then something stood out to me before I put it down, and they prompted me to keep reading. She continuously mentioned someone in the entry that she called Jay. Obviously, I'm not giving my name for privacy reasons. But it does not start with the letter J. It was clear that she and this J person were in some kind of relationship. There were detailed entries about how she would pretend to go to a book club with some of the other ladies in her neighborhood, when in reality, she was with him. She mentioned how the sex with him was the best that she ever had, and most of that was from sneaking around. I was heartbroken. Her account. However, I learned that she actually deleted it. It was her main source of income, and she had to completely get rid of it. A lot of the reading about brands that she worked with pulled their sponsorships because what she didn't align with their values, having their brand attached to. She wrote about how her name was a liability. After the fact, I don't know what she's doing now, and I don't care. All I know is that she had her entire life ruined. She felt like she was falling for him because she screwed me over. Oh, I'm really sorry you had to go through all of this. It's such a shame that your girlfriend would throw away a and she didn't know what to do relationship with somebody who was obviously a very caring, and attentive partner. In the end, it's never worth it to cheat on somebody. I understand that. Because of me. People have their personal turn-ons and fetishes. But if that is going to lead to somebody else getting hurt, you shouldn't be so selfish. It sounds like she felt like she had met the love of her life to sleep with. Your friend too. She definitely had some feelings for him before he reached out. He wasn't a very good friend. And it wasn't me. If he was so tempted to reach out to her and hook up, I have to wonder if maybe there had been some flirtatious conversations before all of, as if that wasn't enough to make me want to divorce her and got your girlfriend in. The end, it's how the brands pulled their sponsorship of her after she did something so bad. Right then and there, not a lot of companies care about things like that, but when you're banking on an influencer getting your target audience to buy things then, and in one of the later entries, have to care. I hope you're able to move on from this. Not everybody is as selfish and careless as your ex-girlfriend, and I hope you, she mentioned, can find somebody who really values everything you're putting into your relationships. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening that our daughter saw her with her boyfriend, feel free to like and subscribe. If you haven't already, also comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story I was absolutely would like to infuriated share with when I read that situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care. She had been so careless that our child caught her with another man. In the entry, she mentioned how she was able to convince my daughter not to say anything because she didn't want to divorce me. She manipulated my daughter into lying to me. It was clear from the journal entries that the boyfriend knew he was sneaking around with a married woman. The anonymity that made me held within the journal that he was someone she was protecting. Or violent guy. Instead, I thought she didn't want his life to be ruined out. As much as I wanted to rush down and confront my wife. On top of that, I needed to figure out if he was one of our friends who was married with children. I needed to know. I left the attic with the journal and I hid it in my dresser. My wife was out of the house, so I took the time that I had alone social media profiles and emails when I found someone who I suspected of being the man. I had nearly forgotten he existed. He was someone that my wife and I would go on double dates before, and a good friend. At a certain point, my wife was close with him, and I would watch football games together. My wife came to me one day, anything to do with them anymore. I questioned her at the time and asked her about what happened, and she just told me, made some unsavory about how comments. We were raising our children. I was never given an option to talk to them about it. My wife put her foot down and said that we were through with them. I respected her decision about it at the time, so I didn't care that much. Looking back now, I think that something happened with her and the other man that forced her to stay away. On top of that, a lot of the problems we were having in our marriage were around that everything time. Made sense. All of the puzzle pieces were there. How to put them together. We still lived in the same neighborhood as them. They were only a few houses down from us. We ran into them from time to time, but we all tended to ignore each other. I played it cool. After I found out what I did, while I tried to figure out what I wanted to do, my wife didn't suspect and I just pretended like everything was normal. Days after I was out front, mowing the lawn. When I saw the other man drive away I had no idea or when he would be back. I started walking over to his house. Before I could think better, it was a perfect opportunity to talk to his wife and see if she ever suspected anything was going on. I knocked on the door, and she was surprised, but she welcomed me inside. After a few minutes of small talk, I asked her, she ever suspected her husband cheated on her. She was taken aback by my question. I think she realized that I was asking was a time when she did suspect he was cheating, and she thought was that with my wife. Very uncomfortable with their relationship, that nothing was going on. Regardless, she asked not to see each other anymore. Apparently, that's the friendship between All four of us really ended. What she said confirmed in my mind
That her husband was the man in
the journals.
I explained to
everything that I discovered.
and I watched her heart break.
as she listened
I felt awful.
for telling her. But she deserved to
We
know
came
the
up
truth.
with a plan to
I went home later that afternoon and told my wife that I ran into the old neighbor outside
and that we wanted to
get together for dinner. My wife was
But I
against
told
it
her
at first. Put the past
I
behind
was able
us.
to convince.
When we got there, the other couple was in the kitchen cooking dinner. The other man was surprised to see me, and there was some uncomfortable
energy between everyone.
I did notice that my wife and the other guy hardly even made
eye contact.
during everything. We all sat down for dinner, and when the conversation
I brought
stalled,
up how we were selling
and
the
I was
house.
looking through the attic and found my wife's
old journal. She nearly spit
When I
up her
mentioned
wine.
She seemed to be
that I read
frustrated,
it. But I ignored her and revealed the contents of it.
When I was done,
I outright
and
asked
the
her.
other affair started.
They tried to deny it, but there was no
They
use.
admitted to everything,
Was pleading
with me to leave, so we could
talk about it in private. I told her that
I didn't
to
want
talk about it
and
in
I
private.
forced
Her to tell me everything
right there. All of the double dates
that we went on. She and the other guy
started to develop feelings one night while they were over at our house,
and we had a few glasses of wine.
they were getting
A little handsy.
while they were alone.
From there they had sex for the first time.
and they
A
continued
5-year.
long affair. My wife developed feelings
The
that
other man didn't have. She wanted to leave me
to be with him, but he didn't want
to leave his
because
wife.
of that.
My wife cut
everything off.
both myself and my neighbor
Told them that we didn't want anything
with
to
them
do
after this,
coming back from it.
and we would be leaving.
I told my wife that I had already been talking to a divorce attorney. She broke down, pleading
cried
with me to
forgive her.
She told me that it was
one of her biggest regrets,
and she would,
in an instant,
if she could.
on top of everything.
I told her how disgusting
that
it was.
she involved our daughter in the lie.
Over the next several months, we went about getting our divorce.
Throughout all of it,
Convince me just to go to
counseling
forgive
and to
her. I wasn't listening
to any of it. We already had
the house listed
so we
for sale.
agreed to continue
With that wave,
split the sale,
cost of the house
and half of that was all she was awarded in
the divorce.
I didn't know
her anything,
beyond that point.
and because she involved
our daughter
in the affair,
and convinced her
I
to
was
lie.
rude. My children,
Still see them.
but I have been working with them
as best as I
to
can
make sure they're not
going to be
too damaged
all
by
of this. My daughter
who was involved in the lie has
expressed how sorry she was for keeping it.
for so long
She felt guilty throughout the year, but she didn't
know what to do because she
didn't want to
destroy the family.
at this point.
I have no love for my ex,
Not
not
she.
involved.
Our daughter, I might have been able to
Look back at
some memories
but the
fondly
guilt,
on our child is important.
and I can't
Stand to be around her because of that. OP, I can't believe you
had to go through
all of that. Finding out that
your partner has cheated on you,
is awful enough,
but after you
dedicated so
time
much
to them is unbelievable. Carrying on
a 5-year,
long affair is not an easy feat.
so she must have
had to do quite
bit
a
of lying
and deception.
to cover that up.
It's truly disgusting that she allowed
Your daughter to lie.
for so long
I can't imagine the weight of withholding
that information.
on a child. I
Heartbroken
felt
when you mentioned that
your daughter was worried about being
the one to ruin your family because your wife convinced
her to lie. No child
should have to harbor a
secret like
and your
that.
wife should be ashamed for making her.
I can't imagine
how it must
to
have
find
felt
out
that your wife
had feelings for another
person and wanted
to leave you. Had it not been for
the other man wanting to stay,
with his wife, all of this
might have ended
a lot sooner.
I think from
the way it sounds,
he didn't have that she did.
She seemed like she was just a mistress to him, and she
wanted more,
I'm glad you and the neighbor both got divorced
and can move past this.
I am wishing you
and your children nothing but the best, and I hope that you guys can
move forward strongly
as
a family now.
Let's move on
Our
to
next story. And I have been
together for
3 years.
We met in our
biology class
during college.
And
We enjoyed
our lab time together.
I asked her out on a study
date before anything else
and she agreed
to go with me.
We ended up
about
talking
everything
but biology, and we both
failed the test
that we were
attempting to
we
study
had
for
a really, and I saw a
future with her, regardless of us being very young. At the time,
I never really
had the desire to mess around
with a lot of women.
I thought that I found one
and I was content with being with her. We graduated college and we moved together right away. A hard time
landing good.
jobs after
But
graduating.
after a
little while, we were starting to settle
into everything.
My girlfriend studied marketing
and communications in college was to study how people became
influencers.
Her project
Was to become
one herself.
She was able to gain
a significant
following
brand
and deals.
that she still has
To this day,
because of
she
that.
was able to work on growing
Her
her following,
and eventually
start working.
for herself.
It wasn't a
conventional by
job,
any means.
but I was supportive of.
Her and she
Was doing something
she enjoyed.
so I was happy.
At first, most
her
of
followers
seemed to be
who were
women
interested
in fashion,
makeup
and
tips.
her follower
Demographic.
turned to a lot of men.
She's a very
beautiful woman,
and I totally understand why the men were
following her,
unfortunately
because her
audience had
transitioned.
to mostly men.
Her content catered to them more,
She was posting pictures and
more revealing clothes,
and bikinis, and a lot of
The captions became more
suggestive. I was a little
about what
insecure.
was posting.
I didn't like
To know that
a bunch of other my girlfriend in that way.
there's nothing
Wrong with women
posting things
like that
but
online.
I'm a very private person, so it was hard for me to get past that. I knew that she got dozens of DMs a day
for men wanting
to sleep with
her. Sometimes
She would even
show them to me, and we would
laugh about
them together. As unhappy as
was
I
with other men.
way they did. I was confident
She wouldn't.
I didn't think that she would anyway. My girlfriend is sort of an old-fashioned
Type of romantic. She likes a
partner who will do little chivalrous things for her. There
are some things that she just doesn't think that she should be
the one to do,
and one of those
clean her
is
car.
I don't really
Mind doing acts of
are a
service
great way.
that I care.
So it's a small
Price to pay
to make her happy.
So one day I
was cleaning out her car,
and I found
something that
raised a lot
of red flags.
for me underneath the passenger
Side seat was a condom wrapper.
right away. I knew that it
Wasn't mine,
my girlfriend.
and I don't have sex in
The car,
and on top of
we've
that,
been together long enough
that we've had talks about
talks.
protection
and we weren't.
using condoms.
So someone else had been in
my girlfriend's car
that needed
my
a
girlfriend
condom. Cheated on me. There was no question in my mind.
at the time,
Right away I
looking
tried
for
any evidence that I could.
through social media, but I couldn't find
I
much.
needed to.
Figure out who it
Was before I
confronted
and
her
she tried.
to lie about it.
When I went inside, she
on
was
the couch,
sleeping while
a television show played in
the background. It was excellent.
timing, so I
Grabbed her phone
and started looking through it. I searched through her messages
for keywords that people
having an affair
might type in.
eventually.
Friend's
my best
phone number came up. They have been talking about sleeping together.
for a while.
It started my
when
girlfriend posted a picture
of herself
the
at
beach on
her Instagram. He reached out
her
to and told
her
her that he hadn't been
able to stop
thinking about
the picture.
my girlfriend
Him
told
that she
was flattered
to hear him say that she
had thought about
for
him
a while.
Their messages were
Extremely sexual, and my girlfriend even initiated sending nudes to
She
him.
was
Obviously very excited
to see
those, and he told
her that he needed
see
to
how ASAP without hesitation. My girlfriend
She wanted
They
to as
made
well
plans right away to
get together.
and hook up.
He had a girlfriend
That he lived with.
so I had no doubts that
The condom wrapper was in the car because they hooked up there.
to avoid being
Caught after
they had sex.
they texted each other talking about how much
fun they had,
From there they seemed to have
met up countless
other times. Both of them mentioned how they enjoyed
sneaking
with
around
each other. They were both turned on the
by
possibility.
I was
And
furious
right away I was going
to be leaving
my girlfriend if she liked
Friends
my so much.
and be with him.
For all I cared
I couldn't stand
to look at her any longer.
sent
I
myself as much
I
evidence
set
as
my
I could.
phone back down
If they were going to completely
betray my trust
and disregard
that
the
I
care
have for them, then I was going to
get my
payback.
I
on
knew
them.
that
My girlfriend
kept her social
media profiles
logged in on her laptop, so
while she was still asleep.
I went over to
I
them.
changed the password on
her Instagram account
so she couldn't log in easily. I took the screenshots that I had of with my best friend, posted
I
them
on her wall
and story. I even wrote a
caption about
how she cheated. I made sure to
tag my former best friend in the post as well.
the comments
Quickly rolled in
and I started
to feel kind of bad then.
I remembered that she completely
Disrespected
and I
me.
didn't care anymore. Her follow account
Was dropping.
I could almost Watch it happen. The post was
being shared
countless times, and I felt like
I had won
small
a
victory. My girlfriend woke up about
half an hour later completely oblivious to what
in her life.
when she realized
She screamed and found me sitting at her computer. She
was angry
but I
with
just
me.
told her that I wanted her to leave the apartment. My best friend
Was trying to call me
and explain what happened, but I blocked his number and ignored him.
his girlfriend
Reached out to me.
However,
she had a lot of questions and I
did
what I could.
she ended up
Breaking up
with him too.
I kicked my
Girlfriend out
the
of
apartment and let her
deal with the
aftermath of everything
had
I
just done. I kept an eye
for
on
a while.
things. I thought that
She blocked
me on social
media because
I couldn't find